Good afternoon, guys. This is your boy Antoine Rivers. I'm back here on the Conviction Fiction podcast, and um, I just want to just be upfront and honest with you guys. Yeah, this is the space, where we narratives get challenged, right? Accountability gets real, and transformation gets the mic. So today's guest is a man whose story sits right at the intersection of power, temptation, collapse, and redemption. Jonathan Todd Schwartz once managed the money of Beyonce, Mariah Carey, Alanis Morissette, Linkin Park, um, Halsey. I mean, just the list goes on and on. It's ridiculous. And I mean, people trusted him. Hollywood trusted him. Clients adored him. They even called him, and we're going to talk about that, the devil, the diva whisperer. But beneath the glamour was a growing addiction: gambling, drugs, denial, and eventually one of the most public financial betrayals in modern entertainment. So today, we walk through that rise, the fall, and what redemption looks like after, right? So I want to welcome you guys to another episode of The Conviction Fiction. Hey, Jonathan, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you again for having me.
Oh no, thank you for being a guest on the show tonight. Like, let's just start. Let's just get into it. Let's start at the top.
Let's go for it.
Let's. What did everyday life look like for you during the peak of your career?
I mean, during the peak of my career, pre-addiction, pre-maladaptive behaviors, it was really just having the privilege to work with wonderful clients, high net worth celebrities. You mentioned some of them. A really, at pre-addiction, I would say I was, you know, really good at being an entertainment business manager. I walk into the office, I greet my three partners, I greet the 75 employees. We had a lot of responsibility, and the clients trusted us to meet their expectations or exceed their expectations. And again, pre-addiction, it looked very differently from my lens,
Mhm.
and the lens from others, up until my addiction started and my poor choices. But Hollywood, I treated everyone like I would treat you and me. We're all human beings. I never put an entertainer or celebrity on a pedestal. And I
Yeah.
often say that I believe that helped me kind of earn their trust, because they didn't want someone who was enamored by them. I was fortunate enough to work with really humble artists, humble athletes, humble actors and actresses. And that humility, in some degree, helped decrease my ego. Um,
Okay, so that's what I want to get into now. We're gonna have like that organic conversation, like spontaneous. Like, so before things went wrong, before the spiral, like, when did you first like feel like, okay, I'm a player in this stuff. I'm somebody in this inner circle, because that's where things normally go awry. When was it when you felt like you were somebody?
so it's a great question. I would say that the moment that Linkin Park started interviewing artists in 2000, before their release of Hybrid Theory in November of 2000. They're very professional. They took, I'm making this up, half a dozen to a dozen interviews with business management firms. And my former partner, Michael Oppenheim, may he rest in peace. He passed away a couple of years ago, whom I love and adore. He brought me, I was a very young business manager at the time. I wasn't even a partner at the time. And he took me into the meeting with the guys, and, they liked the fact that, you know, they had a guy in my partner who was seasoned and more experienced, and a young man like me who at that time didn't have all the gray hair you can see now. Um, but a guy who they saw in me who really wanted to work hard for them, wanted to learn. I really believe that knowledge is power. And that was my lucky break, because Lincoln Park came out of the box right upon release of Hybrid Theory in a way I have never seen before in my career. You know,
I
they
mean,
rise.
these are icons. You're talking about icons in the industry. People
I,
who themselves are surrounded by like gatekeepers and high expectations. So I mean, how did you get to earn that level of trust?
it started with asking them what their expectations are, and being honest. Can I accomplish those expectations? And they really kind of helped me become a better business manager, because there's six bright guys. They had high expectations, and I believe they should have high expectations. It's their money, it's their personal life, it's their professional career. And it felt an honor to be able to be part of the team. One thing that my peers and other professionals in the industry, uh, they believe that they're the talent. I never believed that I was the talent. I was just a member of their professional team that they got to choose and select. And and that's how I looked at it. And I really wanted to prove to them, every day, that they made the right choice. And I feel like I served them well enough until the addiction came that I accomplished that goal of mine. They
Yeah.
really did teach me a lot. I have the utmost respect for them, because prior to coming into the world of the entertainment community, I, like many people outside at that point in my life of the entertainment community, thought it was still about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. But what I learned quickly with a band like Linkin Park was that sex, drug, and rock and roll era was over before 2000. It was about treating your music, your art, and all other merchandise and touring, their overall global business, as a business.
Yeah.
And they also, at the same time, were able to manage their love for their family. Their obligations, first and foremost, were to their wives and children. And I really respected that a lot about them. And they're really talented. They really had a huge fan base
They
that
were huge. I was a fan. I mean, looking back, I mean, they were at the top of their game. You're talking about the 2000s. Like you said, they came out of nowhere. And for you to be around them and they trusted you. Now, just looking back, were there signs like did you I mean, even if you're around these stars, were there signs like maybe loneliness, or did you feel pressure, or was it just strictly burnout that you're I mean, you were in all manners of the term, you were successful. What was becoming too heavy to hold? What happened?
so I didn't really feel any pressure from clients or externally. I think I put pressure on myself. I
Mm,
wanted so badly to be successful. I started, when I became a partner, I started to make a lot of money. But money never brought me happiness, because I, deep down inside, I had to put up this facade that I was happy and a successful man with a beautiful family. That part was true. I had a beautiful family, beautiful three sons, a beautiful wife, you know, and
and a
my
lot of money, and a lot of money.
and a lot of money. And at that time, again, it was nice. Don't get me wrong, that I could provide for my family. That was
Mm.
always my goal. I grew up poor, and I wanted to do something different when I had children and I was married. But I was also became a workaholic. I was available 24/7. I didn't know how to set boundaries. And maybe that's because I was people pleaser, even before active addiction. I was a people pleaser. I really wanted people to like me, because I grew up with a lot of trauma, and I never felt good enough. And I didn't strive for perfection, but I demanded perfection on my staff. And if I'm going to present something to a client like Linkin Park or anybody else, I want to have ample time to review it. I want to make sure it's what they asked for, and that we provide it to them timely and accurately. And we
Yeah.
were able to do that. And but I want to also say, it wasn't that I was able to do it, because I could not do this alone. We were fortunate enough to have a great staff that contributed to every part and every facet of how we represented a client.
Yeah. And what's amazing is that you're able to open up now about, having everything. You have the family, you had your kids, you were successful in your business, but there were cracks, right? And you know that's what we're going to try to unpack now, because that's what we do on this show, right? We want to unpack the cracks, so it may help someone else, because they're experiencing that too. So beneath that whole polished image, you know, there was addiction, there were drugs, gambling, and some, I guess, all of them were some form of emotional escape. Um, so can you identify when that second life began for you, or was there a moment?
Yeah, it was in 2010 when I was coaching my kids' youth sports teams. And one of the assistant coaches asked me if I want to place a bet. And at that time, I loved participating in sports. I loved watching sports. But the moment that he asked me, and of course I said yes, and I don't know why I said yes, but I did, placing that first bet was the moment where, and I lost for that week. And now I'm starting to chase. So the moment I placed that first bet was the moment that my life was going to change inevitably.
Crazy.
I, you
That's
know, I
crazy.
sorry.
One bet. How much was the bet? If I'm not being too nosy.
No, you please ask anything. I hope the story can help your listeners and viewers. The first bet was probably like $50 to $100, but then as day two and day three and day four and so on in that whole entire 7 day week, it ended up where I lost 25,000. And
Wow.
25,000 is a lot of money, but I had the money. Why didn't I take my own money to pay that first week? Had I done that, had I had the courage to just take the money for myself and not worry that my wife would find out or anybody else, the bookkeeper in my office who paid my bills, things would have been very different for me. I wouldn't be on your podcast right now, right? If I had just taken the money from myself rather than stealing money from a handful of clients.
That's crazy because addiction always starts with that this helps me type of function. Like I'm making myself feel good. That's what addiction is about. I want to feel good, so I'm going to do a behavior that's like destructive to me or destructive to my career, my family, all that stuff. And we often tell ourselves something in the beginning to make it feel normal. What did you tell yourself after you lost the 25,000? Like, what? I got the money.
What I told myself was what a compulsive gambler like myself would say. It's this belief of grandiosity, this belief that next week, week two, I could just win that back with one bet, and now all my problems are solved. I could just move on and stop. There's no such thing as stopping once I got going. Why? Because I'm chasing for 6 years almost every day, placing bets with my bookie. And it became where obviously, the government said that they calculated my total gross debts over a 6 year period, and it was $21 million. And so of that $21 million, my net loss was 7 million, and unfortunately that's was embezzled from a handful of clients, and that's what led me to my 6 year federal sentence.
So what happened, Jonathan? Tell me what happened. What point did the addiction start bleeding over into the work? Like it had to be a point where he was like, okay, I got money, but like it'll be easier to like use their money. When did the line between personal struggle and like professional responsibility start to blur?
After week one, to be honest, after
Damn.
week after week one, I mean, no, really, it's like after week one, I adopted this mindset of chasing, like because in hindsight, it sounds silly, but in real time, the 25,000 wasn't really a lot of money to me. So the fact that I took the money in that moment is the moment that I lived in fear every day during my 6 year addiction that inevitably I'm going to get caught, when I could have simply stopped it. I could have sought out help. But at that point in my life, I thought I was Superman. I had a big ego. I know I'm going to win it back. No one's going to catch me in my crime. I'm going to pay everybody back, next week, week two,
Yeah.
week three. And then all of a sudden, as I said, just the bets became ridiculous. I wouldn't bet on just one game. I'd bet on every game. NFL, college football, all the games on the board, not just who's going to win, but totals, over-unders, teasers, parlays. I was becoming a complete degenerate. But to the outer world, I presented myself, as I said earlier, as this well put together guy that has a wonderful book of business. And for the most part, multitasking, on one hand being this compulsive gambler and eventually becoming a drug addict. And on the other hand, a guy who, from his staff and from the entertainment community and from the clients, was someone they adored and respected and was doing a better job than any of the clients expected.
Yeah, that's crazy because on this podcast we don't excuse harm ever, but we do walk the entire truth. Because you got into, addictions are addictions, whether it's gambling or drugs, right? The truth is, consequences don't just arrive; they normally build up and they just crash on you.
Yes.
And even through the drug use and with the gambling, there was a discovery. There was a discovery and a downfall. So let's talk about 2016, right? You were working with Alanis Morissette, and she discovered that a lot of her money was missing. She just found out, like, what was it? What was that album? Was that the Little Pill album?
Jagged Little Pill.
Yeah, the Jagged Little Pill. Okay, so she discovered a lot of her money was missing, and then, well, for you, what was going through your mind when everything finally came out?
I was still in denial. So, so prior to the end of 2015, Alanis fired me. And the irony behind that, no pun intended when I use irony, ironic, because that was one of her great songs. She hired my former cousin's business management firm and went with one of his partners. So my cousin's firm, his partners, the one that received all the information that we sent over to them, and he discovered that $4.6 million of cash withdrawals was taken out. And when he asked Alanis, she had no idea. And that was the moment where I realized I'm still in denial, because when they asked me, where that money went, I just came up with one of my hundreds of lies throughout that dark period of addiction, and said that she chose to invest in a cannabis business. I don't know where that came from, but
In
it came from
2016?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You were above the grade there. Everybody would have felt like really roll well in 2023.
But yeah, so it was just it became one lie after another. And it was that moment where I really started to get scared. That, I would say about after the first year of almost 6 years gambling every day, I really started, you mentioned earlier, negative consequences. I never really paid attention to the negative consequences because, again, as a gambler, I believed that I was going to win it all back. But let's say hypothetically I won $7 million back. How was I going to use the cash to pay the clients back without them noticing? You don't think the bank's going to say, you just deposited $4.6 million in cash for Alanis? So now I realize there's no end to this other than either insanity, death, or incarceration.
Yeah.
And
you were in the headlines, bro. Like, those 24 to 48 hours, I don't know when they say, we're just honest, when the shit hits the fan, right? Those first 24 to 48 hours, your fall, it was like in the headlines, investigations, your firm started like, nah, we don't even know that guy. What did that feel like for you?
So my best friend from childhood would always send me all the publications that my story was written in. And I said, you got to stop. I said, I'm not interested in reading it. I'm already worried, like, what's going to happen to my children? What's going to happen to my wife? What's going to happen to my mother who was battling and still is stage 4 lung cancer? What's going to happen to my stepdad? What's going to happen to them? That's the negative consequence. Yeah. I ruptured my family dynamics. I hurt so many people.
But
I heard
what? I don't mean to cut you off, but like that brings me to like what is just hit me. So, what was harder? You think like the legal stuff or like the people who trusted you? What was like facing the people that trusted you, like your family, or like the legal stuff? What was harder?
the legal stuff was going to be what it was going to be, right? When I first took the lie detector test and called my attorney, and I said, "How did I do?" And he said, "You failed worse than anybody else in that polygraph test." I followed up by saying, "So what does that mean?" He said, "You need to come see me tomorrow because you're facing 23 years in federal prison." So that was the moment that I had to tell my wife the truth, that
Yeah,
all these years, one, committing infidelity, two, I haven't been emotionally present for you or the kids during my active addiction, and also told her that I had suicidal ideation, and that's when I really started using blow,
mm-hmm.
and I just needed to numb myself because I wasn't getting a dopamine rush from gambling. Because again, this is the theme. It's just the chasing. I hated gambling. There became a point where I hated gambling, but I
Mm-hmm.
did it with this mindset that I'm going to win it back. And then when I realized that that was virtually impossible, I started taking up drugs to really numb myself. And that's when it really affected me at work. I would
The
call
spiral.
I was spiraling now. I would call my assistant and tell her to cancel this meeting or that meeting. I'd close my door in the office and continue to,
Yeah.
snort the powder, if you will.
Mhm.
And I just, I'd go into meetings, and sometimes before the meeting, I'm starting to bleed out of my nasal passage. So I was absolutely out of control. I'm lucky to be alive today, but I still have a lot of wreckage from my past, but I choose not to live in my past, but I don't forget my past.
Awesome. And that's what we try to focus on, like being accountability. Being accountable. And accountability is not like the the end. It's the beginning. When your freedom taken, your identity was stripped because they pretty much label you like a con man, thief, monster, blah blah blah. You don't care about anything but yourself, and then the mirror starts to get real. We start to rebuild, and that's what this next segment is going to be about. It's like the rebuilding process, right? So you went to prison for a quite amount of time. Like, did you have to like pay back the money, or how's that? I mean, are you still paying back the money? I don't know. Like,
Yes, I am. So I don't have a lot of money today. I value the dollar in my life today more so than I ever valued a dollar. I make, enough money to put some food in my refrigerator or roof over my apartment.
mhm,
But I have a large restitution that I make a payment to the federal government, and fully compliant with, all the responsibilities that I choose to take today and that have been presented to me by the federal government. Um, in terms of personal accountability, I'm huge on personal accountability. I don't make excuses. I don't play the victim role. Today I go around and I lecture and I work in treatment as a
awesome.
therapist. Yeah, and I really that's my passion. I found my passion. I found my calling when I was in prison, and it was to help my brothers and sisters not make the same mistakes that I made.
Yeah,
And that,
that was my next thing. I was going to ask you, like, when you were in prison, like, who did you become? And you became, someone that's going to help people.
it started with in prison, running a victim impact program. So for some reason, out of like 450 inmates, so I was asked by a CO to run his responsible program called the Victim Impact Program. So we
Mhm.
had about 7 to 9 guys every few weeks enroll in the program. And I was encouraging them to recognize their behaviors and how from those behaviors, identify your victims. So when the white collar guys, maybe it took them a couple weeks to kind of be vulnerable and acknowledge that they had victims.
This is not direct when you're talking about white collar. It's not like immediately direct. You got like insurance, you got like this, that, and others. Like, it's really not hurting anybody. It's almost Robin Hood, right? These
Yeah,
are corporations. They're good. They'll be okay.
Exactly. That's why it took them a couple weeks, because then I would go on to the drug dealers and they would say to me, Jonathan, what do you mean I have victims? I said, well, what do you mean? I said, you don't know the person or persons you sold your drugs to, if they had an overdose and died, if they became addicted, how it hurt their families. After a few weeks with them, it was so nice when you have that 15-minute phone call with your family or loved one or friends, and I could hear them change their tone with their baby mama or someone who's taking care of their kids. And instead of saying, F you, I'm here, you know, they changed the way they communicated from this program. They recognized that they should be grateful that they have someone who's taking care of their children,
Right.
and tell that woman that you love her, that you're grateful. To me, that was the first moment where I felt like I was being of service while incarcerated. And for me, it's all about, from that moment, it was all about being of service.
Yeah, and well, even with GA Gamblers Anonymous, it became a big part of your recovery. If there was one thing, like, what did you learn there that you couldn't learn anywhere else?
You know, I learned a few things. I learned not to judge a book by its color. So, you know, when I spent time getting to know almost as many inmates as I could. I don't care about their color. I don't care about their race. I don't care about their religion. Stop judging a book by its cover, Jonathan. And when I got to take the time to really understand who they are at their core, their values aligned with mine. And people say, values, Jonathan, you had values? No, I compromised my values. I accept that I made poor choices. But the moment I entered prison, about 6, 7 months into my time, I realized I needed also to learn how to reflect on my past behaviors so that my kids could be proud of me when I come out back into society, so that I can help people. So prison helped me to learn how to be more humble. Prison helped me to understand that I have a gift, which is to help people in a genuine and authentic way. And also helped me to realize that I can be my authentic self and I don't have to put up a facade anymore. I don't have to look over my shoulders. I actually like to call myself a nerd today, because by being a nerd, my behaviors today are very congruent with pro recovery behavior. I'm no longer dishonest. I'm no longer manipulative. I no longer have those 75 plus character defects that I have to carry with me. And yeah, sure, I have some of those defects of character that rise to my surface, but through my self-awareness, I can recognize them and change my inner dialogue. And so I'm really proud of that. I mean, again, it doesn't dismiss what I did, but it's part of my redemption.
And that's amazing, because part of the recovery process is being able to look at yourself honestly, being able to look at yourself for the good and the bad. You know, a lot of things that one of the character defects that I had was, like, I would view myself as a good person. You probably heard of that.
Yeah.
I would go and, make sure that the trash at my mom's house was taken down. I would make sure that she was good, but then I'll go out and sell drugs. It's like, hey, but I took the trash down. I'm a good person, right?
Right.
I would use those things to justify saying that, it's important for me to view. It was all up like a facade. It was that thing that I tricked my mind into believing that, no matter what I did, if I do this one great thing or this one good thing, then, it's all well. And not understanding that at the end of the day, if I'm doing those bad things, whether it's selling drugs or guns or whatever, that at the end of the day, if I'm being stripped away from my family, if I'm being stripped away from my mom, I won't be able to take the garbage down anymore because I'm in prison, or I'm dead because I'm doing all this other stuff on the other side. So it's like a duality. You're living two lives at the same time. So that's what we try to unpack here on the Conviction Fiction podcast. I got a couple of books that like go through this stuff, like the process, some work sheets and stuff. But your story. Let's go back to your story. Like, you were released when the world was basically shut down. So, like, I don't know. It's like, what was rebuilding like? What was that like? To begin anyway. Despite everything, what did the first few months look like?
Horrible. So when I was released, I'm grateful that I was released a day before. So I went to Sheridan, Oregon, because they had a residential drug and alcohol program. So I got a year off my sentence. After I completed the sentence, after 2 years, I mean, sorry, not the sentence, but the program, I put in a request to be transferred to the only private federal prison camp in the United States, and that was in Taft, California.
Yeah.
And so I took Con Air with the U.S. Marshals, shackled, guns ablazing, and just to bring a laugh to your visitors, to your viewers, excuse me, I was vegan the whole time in prison, and so they give you bologna sandwiches, and I'm like, I'm not eating, so I didn't eat anything for 24 hours. And I think I'm brought to Pahrump in Nevada, and then they moved us to Taft after a month being in Pahrump, and that was awful, that experience. But when I was released from Taft as a result of COVID, I was one of 2 inmates that was released before Taft closed down. The government didn't want any private federal prison. So I was allowed to go to what I thought was, at the time, my fiance, my girlfriend, because obviously before I entered prison, my wife filed for divorce, rightfully
Of
so.
course, yeah. She was gone. She was done with you, bro.
Long gone, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
I was not a good husband at all, as I said earlier. But the moment she picked me up, she didn't give me a hug. When I was on the phone with her the whole time, like not the whole time, but often during my years incarcerated, the guys would say, "What are you doing with this woman?" You hear a guy in the background. She's cheating on you. So I would ask her, I was like, listen, it's okay if you're cheating on me. Just let's end it, And I became codependent in prison because I had nobody to talk to. The only one on the phone I was talking to was my mom or was my younger son. Nobody wanted to talk to me. And so I became codependent. And when I came out of prison, I was required to be on home confinement for 16 months with an ankle monitor. So I went to her apartment. And what happened there was I sensed that she was still cheating. That something was
in
going
LA.
on.
She's in LA.
She was in LA. I was told I have to sleep on the couch, not in bed with her. And I'm like, this is weird. So she rarely talked to me for those 2 months. And I realized I got to go move to another apartment. But because I was on home confinement, I had to stay in that apartment complex. So the only unit available was a studio apartment. Unfortunately, that studio apartment looked directly at her balcony, and I could see her.
You see who's coming, who's going.
For like 9 months. So I'm like, but my higher power did that on purpose.
Yeah.
And it was a great lesson for me to learn. The lesson I learned, and I take with me to this day, is my higher power did that because he wanted me to understand what my wife felt when she discovered I cheated on her. Now Jonathan, when your fiance or girlfriend cheated on you, how it feels, and you don't feel good. Right. So I needed to feel that. And saying I have a relationship that's healthy with a woman, she trusts me, she doesn't judge me for my past, and I'm very transparent. I don't hide my past. I'm very authentic, and I have no desire to cheat on anyone I'm with today, and particularly, of course, with the woman I'm with now, because it's one of the many harmful things I've done in my life.
Yeah. And growth is, it's slow change, man. And it can be repetitive. Redemption is daily work, done off camera. Like when, you're able to deal with, the issues of trauma, the things that you like, codependency. You spoke about that.
Yes.
So that's when we start to really test those things when we are, in that growth mode. So let me ask you this. Can someone like you really change?
Here's my answer to that is with 100% conviction, no pun intended, I've changed. But here's the thing. I'm no longer a people pleaser. So I put myself out on this podcast. I'm transparent. 50% of your audience, excuse my French, might think I'm a scumbag and I don't have humility. I'm okay with that because I know my true self today. I'm comfortable in my own skin today. The other 50% say, you know what, this guy's humble. This guy's, giving back to the addiction and mental health community, those that experience trauma, to not make the same mistakes he made. I don't pay attention so much to the comments because the truth is I'm doing this to help those that want the help. And if I could help half of the people that listen or view your podcast, then I've accomplished my goal. And the other half, they have a right to call me any names they want. I wish they would take the time to get to know me, but that's not about me. I can't control other people today, nor am I trying to. So I believe that I'm absolutely a changed person. That's why I like to say, as I did earlier, that I'm a nerd today. And the truth is, I don't expect, even I'm still trying to earn back the love of two of my three kids 10 years later. But the words out of my mouth is not the way to earn back that trust. It's
Yeah.
through my daily actions. If you observe my daily actions, I think I can earn back your trust.
There you go, bro. I'm telling you, I know a thing or two about consistency. Um, I've been home since like 2012. When I went away, my girls were like 2 and 3 years old. When I got out, they were like graduating high school. You know what I mean? But I
Yes.
can say today, healthy, like health, like I can say that my oldest daughter, she recently got married. She we had a little riff about uh I didn't want to go. I just didn't feel like I should be there. I mean, here I was, like, the things that she went through growing up. Um I wasn't there, like nightmares, issues with boys and stuff. I sent her a letter, but it took 4 days for it to get back, and like by that time things had changed. So, but she invited me to. She wanted me to walk her down, and
Oh,
we, yeah. It was crazy. It was crazy because I didn't want to go, and she told me to go. It was like, you've been doing the work. And being available. And that's my advice to you. I mean, with the kids, like, just be available. You don't have to, like, come in and, hey, lay down the law, so to speak. But whenever they need you, just be available. Um, yeah,
yeah. So no, I agree with you. Like, I realized that I was physically present for my kids, but I
mhm,
wasn't emotionally present in active
yeah,
addiction. And I value, like you just suggested, being emotionally present. Listen, my two of the three kids, they know I love them. Do I wish they were back in my life? Yes. I pray every day for them to come back in my life. But I know that I caused them great trauma and harm. And it's not on Jonathan's timeline. It's on their timeline. And I respect that. But do I cry sometimes? Yes. I miss them
yeah.
dearly. They were my best.
So what do you do, like, when you talk about that and it's a struggle? What do you do actively? Not hoping, not promising, but what do you do to earn back what you broke? What do you do actively?
That's a great question. So I speak to my younger son multiple times a day. He's a senior in college.
Okay.
Um, I don't triangulate him and ask him to go relay a message to the two other boys, his brothers. That's not healthy. What I do is I've learned to live in acceptance, and I've learned to trust my higher power that they'll come back in my life when they're ready. When I first came home from prison, I made the mistake. I sent a text to the two boys, particularly my middle son.
Hmm.
And I said, "Hey, I love you. I would love to see you." And he didn't get back to me. And so I said to my sponsor, and so I continued to do that like multiple times a week, not inundate him, but reasonable, frequency.
Yeah.
And my sponsor said to me, "Jonathan, are you sending him a text so that he knows you love him? Or are you sending him a text expecting him to reply?" And the
Mm.
answer was, I was expecting him to reply. So he said, "You can't do that. That's, just let him know you love him and have no expectations when you send him a text for that he's going to respond." And so, for example, tonight at midnight, my middle son turns 30 years old. I have my alarm set. I'm going to be the first one to send him a text. I'm going to say, "I just want to wish you a happy 30th. I love you." I likely will not get a response, excuse me,
Yeah.
but I don't expect that anymore. So in recovery, having expectations is not healthy,
Yeah.
because if in recovery, if we create expectations and they don't, materialize, it's likely someone can relapse
Yeah,
or
you're gonna give up. You're gonna give up. You're gonna say, like, why am I doing all of this? It was a lot better, when I was on the drugs or when I was gambling. It's
yeah.
easier, like, so Yeah.
It's easier. Yeah, like you asked me earlier, like what I face challenges every day since I've been home. I have bills that are piled up. I can't afford to pay them. What am I going to do? I don't have money. So I have to live, I choose to live in acceptance of that. I work really hard.
Does
Uh,
Beyonce want her money back too?
I can't say yes or no to that. By the
She's
way,
good.
by the way, every client got paid back in full.
There
That's
you
something
go.
that's something that they don't talk about. And again, that doesn't make what I did wrong right, but it is important because we spoke about all the news outlets, when this became public. They never mentioned that the clients were getting paid back, and they truly were paid back in full. Had that not happened, there's no question that that suicidal ideation I experienced would have led to a plan, means, and an attempt. But thankfully, um, they did get paid back, and it doesn't mean that that I didn't harm them. I harmed them. Even the indirect victims, were harmed because I embarrassed them. This
Yeah.
is a guy they were proud to call their business manager, is now the monster that they are portraying me as. I was. My behaviors were aligned with being a horrible person.
Yeah, and your story is amazing. I can't wait for this episode to drop, because your story is a warning. It's basically a lesson. You know, it's a reminder. It shows how easy it is, like really, really easy, for someone to live the life that they want, and when pressure, ego, addiction, when they go unchecked, it can be a difficult climb back, right? It can be very difficult. So to everyone listening, this is why conviction fiction exists. This is why this podcast exists, because not to glamorize crime. I don't get. I see comments sometimes like, "Oh, they're just talking about how tough it is to recover and reentry and stuff." No, we're not. We're just talking about the steps that we take in hopes that it helps someone else, right? Not to
Yeah,
excuse harm, but to explore transformation, honestly and unapologetically.
absolutely.
Um, yeah. So for the listeners out there, if you support our mission, go out. I got a couple of books out. Pick up Turning Forward, No Turning Back, or any of the other books fueling this movement. We don't have sponsors. I don't have sponsors. I don't have commercials. Just truth, healing, and storytelling that keeps our cameras rolling. Jonathan, I want to thank you for stepping into the light fully, honestly, and without running. Right?
Yeah.
You're always welcome. I want you to hang out a little bit after the show, because we have like a little post. About like the post interview stuff.
Yes.
So until next time, guys, I want you to stay honest, stay accountable, and stay free, because on the Conviction Fiction podcast, it's very important that we change the narrative of what it's like to make a mistake and then recover. See you next week.